Imagine a world where crowns outweighed blood and monarchs twisted family bonds into weapons of control. The idea of rulers selling their own kin may sound unthinkable, yet history reveals chilling cases where princes, princesses, and even children were reduced to pawns, imprisoned, mutilated, exiled, or killed for the sake of power. Here, slavery goes beyond chains and markets. It meant treating loved ones as disposable assets, stripped of dignity to secure a throne. Prepare to uncover the top 5 monarchs who sold family members as slaves. Tales of betrayal so dark, they still haunt history. At number 1, we begin with Edward I of England, the Iron King's human pawns. Edward I of England, remembered as the formidable Hammer of the Scots, was not only a ruthless military strategist, but also a monarch who turned family ties into weapons of war. His chilling treatment of Robert the Bruce's female relatives during the First War of Scottish Independence reveals how kinship was exploited as a tool of dominance. Edward captured Elizabeth de Burgh, Bruce's wife, young Marjorie de Bruce, and his sisters Christina and Mary Bruce, alongside Isabella Macduff, Countess of Buchan. Instead of treating them as noble hostages, Edward transformed them into instruments of psychological warfare, stripping them of freedom and dignity. Elizabeth, spared the worst due to her father's alliance with the English crown, was kept under house arrest, comfortable but still a pawn in political calculations. The fate of Marjorie, Bruce's 12-year-old daughter, was even more sinister. Edward initially decreed that she be locked inside a cage at the Tower of London, a punishment designed to terrorize both child and father, though she was ultimately confined to a convent. Christina Bruce also endured imprisonment in a convent, guilty only of her bloodline. The most shocking examples came with Mary Bruce and Isabella Macduff, who were displayed in cages at Roxburgh and Berwick castles. This was not merely captivity, it was humiliation elevated to public spectacle, their suffering broadcast as a warning. Edward's cruelty was strategic. By caging royal women, he attacked Robert the Bruce's heart, reminding him of the personal cost of defiance. These women became living hostages, their very existence traded for political pressure, their pain transformed into a weapon sharper than any sword. Edward I's actions exemplify the darkest manipulation of kin, where women of royal blood were treated not as individuals, but as bargaining chips, living sacrifices to his insatiable hunger for power. At number 2, we encounter the Byzantine emperors, a dynasty of blinding and banishment. Few dynasties in history wielded cruelty against their own kin as systematically as the Byzantine emperors. Within the shifting, treacherous corridors of Constantinople, blinding, castration, and enforced monastic exile became chillingly routine methods of neutralizing royal threats. To the Byzantines, mutilation was not simply punishment, it was a deliberate act of dynastic engineering. By robbing rivals of their sight or reproductive capacity, emperors ensured their adversaries could never claim the throne or establish a rival line. From the 8th century onward, this practice became embedded in imperial politics, turning princes, nephews, brothers, and even sons into permanent prisoners of their own bloodline. One of the most infamous cases occurred when Constantine VI was blinded at the orders of his own mother, Irene of Athens, who sacrificed her son's future to secure her reign as empress. Leo's 5 sons, Constantine, Basil, Gregory, and Theodosius, were brutally castrated and locked in a monastery, one dying as a result of the procedure, demonstrating how childhood itself was no shield from dynastic terror. Basil Lecapenus, born an illegitimate son of Emperor Romanos I, was mutilated in infancy, his entire future traded away in the name of legitimacy and political stability. John IV Lascaris, an emperor at only 7 years old, was overthrown and blinded before reaching his teenage years, condemned to live in darkness as his rivals ruled. Even uncles and brothers were not spared. Nicephorus, Alexios Komnenos, and Isaac II Angelos all met similar fates, betrayed by their closest kin. This chilling cycle of mutilation reveals the Byzantine calculus of mercy. Death was avoided, but life was deliberately crippled, condemning rivals to dependency, humiliation, and erasure from political life. Each act was a grotesque trade, the integrity of a body exchanged for the security of a throne, the vibrancy of life sacrificed for imperial continuity. In Byzantium, the family was not a sanctuary, but a battlefield, and loyalty was mutilated alongside the flesh of kin. At number 3, we arrive at the Ottoman Sultans, the bloody law of fratricide and the Caliphs. The Ottoman Empire, one of the most powerful dynasties in history, perfected a system of succession control that was both pragmatic and terrifying. At its core lay the legalization of fratricide, the sanctioned killing of royal brothers, and the later introduction of the infamous Cafist or cage, a gilded prison for princes. This unique system illustrates how royal blood itself was treated as currency, traded to secure the throne and prevent destructive civil wars. Sultan Mehmed II, remembered as the conqueror, codified this law in a chilling decree that justified the killing of brothers for the common benefit of the state. In reality, this meant that a prince's life was sacrificed at the altar of dynastic stability, their deaths rationalized as necessary payments to preserve empire-wide order. Early examples of this brutal logic included Sultan Bayezid I executing his brother Jacob and Murad II ordering the death of Mustafa, who dared to rally opposition. Mehmed II himself gave the law its darkest reality by ordering the drowning of his infant brother Ahmed Chalabi in the palace bath, demonstrating that even babies were not safe from becoming political sacrifices. The horror escalated under Mehmed III, who committed perhaps the bloodiest act of fratricide in history by murdering 19 of his brothers in a single sweep, burying them beside their father to ensure no rival threatened his reign. Public unease with this savagery eventually led Sultan Ahmed I to abandon fratricide, replacing it with a seniority-based inheritance system and the Cafis. Yet this so-called humane alternative merely exchanged death for a living tomb. Princes confined in the Cafis were cut off from society, deprived of education, political experience, and often driven to insanity. While they remained alive, their freedom, vitality, and mental health were stripped away, traded for the reigning sultans. Security. Some emerged decades later to rule as sultans, but most were broken men, unprepared for power after years of psychological torment. Thus, the Ottoman succession system demonstrates one of the most systematic forms of selling kin into captivity or death, where royal lives were deliberately sacrificed to maintain the survival of empire and dynasty, proving that even family bonds were expendable in the ruthless calculus of imperial power. And number 4. We confront Richard III of England, the vanished princes of the Tower. One of England's most enduring royal mysteries revolves around Richard III and the tragic disappearance of his young nephews, remembered as the princes in the Tower. Their story is one of innocence traded for ambition, where two legitimate heirs were transformed from symbols of continuity into obstacles to be eliminated. In 1483, following the sudden death of Edward IV, his 12-year-old son, Edward V, was set to inherit the crown. As Lord Protector, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, escorted the boy to the Tower of London, supposedly for his safety and coronation preparations. Soon after, the younger brother, Richard, Duke of York, only 9 years old, was brought to join him. The Tower, historically a fortress and ceremonial space, now became their prison. Within weeks, the boys vanished from public view, last seen playing in the Tower Gardens before being withdrawn into its inner chambers. Richard quickly maneuvered to delegitimize their claim, declaring that his late brother Edward IV's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville had been invalid, rendering his nephews bastards. This political move stripped them of their birthright, effectively selling their futures for Richard's ambition. On July 6, 1483, Richard ascended the throne as Richard III, while the prince's fate became shrouded in darkness, though no official account confirms their deaths. Widespread belief holds that they were murdered that same year, likely at Richard's command, though alternative suspects, such as the Duke of Buckingham or even Henry VII, remain part of the debate. Their disappearance marked the most sinister kind of dynastic transaction, the trading of children's lives for a crown. The Tower itself, a place meant to symbolize royal authority, became the site of betrayal, transforming from fortress to tomb. The later discovery in 1674 of two small skeletons buried beneath a staircase within the tower lends grim weight to the story, as remnants of velvet cloth were found with the bones, linking them to royalty. Whether by suffocation, poisoning, or quiet execution, the princes were erased so that their uncle could reign unchallenged. Their removal was not just a loss of life, but the deliberate extinguishing of a dynasty's rightful heirs. Richard III's ruthless ambition demonstrates how kin could be commodified, their very existence traded away as a political liability, proving that even the blood of children could be sacrificed on the altar of monarchy. At number 5, we end with Charles II of England, the royal architect of human trafficking. Unlike other monarchs who exploited their relatives as hostages pawns, or even victims of fratricide, Charles II of England represents perhaps the most literal and devastating example of royal involvement in selling human beings as slaves. His reign directly institutionalized the transatlantic slave trade, transforming it into a state-sponsored, profit-driven enterprise that enriched the monarchy while condemning millions of African men, women, and children to lives of bondage. After the restoration of the monarchy in 1660, Charles wasted no time in investing in the Company of Royal Adventurers of England trading into Africa, a venture that enjoyed royal patronage and monopoly rights to trade enslaved people. Far from being a passive figurehead, Charles gave this company a royal charter, embedding slavery within the machinery of the English state. When the company collapsed in 1672, he seamlessly shifted his support to the newly founded Royal African Company, an institution that would go on to transport more enslaved Africans across the Atlantic than any other single organization in history. Under Charles's sponsorship, the monarchy itself functioned like a commercial enterprise, with human lives reduced to commodities, their bodies fueling wealth accumulation for crown and country. This was not an isolated crime but a structured economic system that treated enslaved people as cargo, each voyage a transaction where human suffering was traded for gold and sugar. The involvement of the royal family did not end with Charles II. His brother, James II, expanded the system, serving as both governor and largest shareholder of the Royal African Company, personally earning thousands of pounds, millions in today's currency, from the sale of enslaved Africans. William III and Mary II inherited and profited from shares in the same company, further embedding slavery into the foundations of royal wealth. Queen Anne escalated the system even further, negotiating the infamous Asiento de Negros in 1713, granting Britain a lucrative monopoly to supply enslaved Africans to Spain's colonies. Secured through the South Sea Company, this arrangement ensured that the monarchy continued to profit from slavery on an intercontinental scale. In this way, Charles II laid the groundwork for an intergenerational legacy of royal enrichment through human trafficking, a legacy that persisted long after his death. While other rulers on this list sacrificed brothers, nephews, or daughters in pursuit of political security, Charles II commodified entire populations, treating African lives as tradable assets for empire building. His actions reveal the monarchy not only as complicit, but as a driving architect of systemic slavery, turning royal power into a corporate machine of human suffering. This represents the most direct and literal form of selling people as slaves tied to a monarch. Millions of lives converted into profit, and an empire enriched through the calculated dehumanization of an entire continent. History shows us that the pursuit of absolute power often came at the cost of blood, freedom, and even family. From heirs caged and mutilated to entire populations sold into bondage, monarchs proved that no life was sacred when a crown was at stake. These chilling tales remind us of the brutal price of ambition and the dark legacies left behind. If you found this journey into history's darkest chapters eye-opening, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching.